Linda Carter jolted in surprise when she noticed the trail of wet footprints leading away from her backyard. A damp towel hung over the fence, still dripping, and the water level in her pool had mysteriously dropped. Someone had been here. At 40, Linda took immense pride in everything she had built. Her two-story home in Austin, Texas, wasn't just a property, it was a testament to years of relentless hard work. But more than anything, her backyard pool was her true sanctuary, a peaceful retreat from the chaos of everyday life. She wasn't the paranoid type. But this was no coincidence. The first time, she brushed it off, convincing herself that maybe someone had wandered in by mistake. But as it kept happening over and over again, she knew the truth. Someone had decided her pool was free for the whole neighborhood to use. She had warned them, but they didn't listen. She had reminded them, but they ignored her. If they thought she would continue to tolerate this, they were sorely mistaken. This time, Linda would make sure they regretted ever trespassing into her space. Linda Carter couldn't shake the growing unease bubbling inside her. No matter how much she tried to stay calm, the wet footprints and the abandoned towel draped over her fence were undeniable evidence. Someone had trespassed into her backyard. She could no longer ignore it. It was time to find out what was really going on. On a Saturday morning, Linda took a stroll around the neighborhood, casually bringing up the situation with her neighbors, hoping for a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was just some kids who had wandered in by accident. But the responses she received left her stunned. A middle-aged woman standing by her fence simply chuckled when Linda told her what had been happening. "Oh, it's probably just the neighborhood kids, Miss Carter," she said dismissively. "I mean, with this heat and a pool as nice as yours, can you really blame them?" Linda frowned. "Blame them? This is my backyard, my pool. The least they could do is ask for permission." The woman shrugged as if it was no big deal. "They're just having a little fun. No harm done." Something about that response didn't sit right with Linda. She approached a middle-aged man washing his car nearby, hoping for a different reaction. But he barely looked up as he said, "Kids will be kids. Just let it go. With a pool like that, who wouldn't want to take a dip?" A slow, simmering anger started to rise in Linda's chest. It wasn't just the kids sneaking into her yard. It was the fact that the adults in the neighborhood didn't see anything wrong with it. They didn't care that her space, her privacy, was being violated. Returning home, frustration gnawed at her. She decided to inspect the pool more closely. The water level had dropped significantly. One of her pool floats had been moved, and an open can of soda sat on the poolside table. Someone had not only used her pool. Linda was done letting this slide. She double-checked the side gate lock, tightening it firmly, convincing herself that maybe this had all been a misunderstanding, that things would stop here. But she was wrong. A week later, as she sat in her living room, a sudden splash echoed from the backyard. At first, she thought it was just the sound of the pool's filtration system. But then, laughter. Not distant, not from the street. It was coming from her backyard. Her heart pounded as she sprang to her feet. Moving cautiously to the window, she pulled back the curtain, and what she saw left her speechless. Right in the middle of her pool, a teenage boy swam effortlessly, as if he were in a public facility. On the edge of the pool, a young girl, his sister, perhaps, kicked her feet in the water, giggling without a care in the world. Anger surged through Linda, and this time, she didn't hold back. She threw open the back door, her voice sharp with fury. "Who are you? And what are you doing in my pool?" The kids froze, caught red-handed. The boy's face went pale as he hurriedly swam toward the edge, grabbing his towel in a panic. I'm sorry," he stammered, water dripping from his soaked hair. "We didn't think you'd mind." Linda crossed her arms, her glare unwavering. "Didn't think I'd mind? This is my property, my pool. Did I invite you here?" The girl hesitated before answering, her voice small. "We live at number 14, just 2 houses down." Her words trailed off under Linda's intense stare. Linda didn't wait for more excuses. She pointed at the gate. "Out, now, and don't ever come back." The kids scrambled out of the yard, leaving a trail of water behind them. Linda stood there, watching until they were gone. She told herself that at least they had learned their lesson. But there was still one more issue to deal with: their parents. If these kids felt so comfortable sneaking into her property, it meant they hadn't been taught any better. The next day, Linda marched to house number 14. Knocking firmly on the door, she waited, expecting an apology. Instead, what she got left her stunned. A woman, most likely the children's mother, opened the door with an exasperated sigh. Arms crossed. "Is this about the pool again?" she asked, as if this were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Linda clenched her jaw, forcing herself to stay calm. "I think we need to talk. Your children entered my backyard without permission. I warned them, but I want to make sure this never happens again." The woman rolled her eyes, smirking. "They're just kids. It's hot outside, and you do have a beautiful pool. Don't you think you're overreacting?" Linda blinked in disbelief. She had expected responsibility, maybe even remorse, but this woman was defending their actions. Before she could respond, a deep voice called out from inside the house. "You're making a big deal out of nothing." A man, probably the children's father, said as he stepped forward. Arms crossed. "They're just kids. If you don't mind, why not just let them have a little fun?" Linda stared at him for a moment, anger simmering beneath her calm exterior. She took a slow, deep breath before speaking, her tone firm and deliberate. "So if I walked into your house, made myself comfortable on your couch, helped myself to your food, would that be okay?" The woman raised an eyebrow. "That's different." "No, it's not," Linda cut in sharply. "My property is not public, and I don't recall inviting anyone into my backyard." The man scoffed, shaking his head. "It's just a pool. Why get so worked up?" Linda let out a cold laugh. "If you don't see the problem, fine, but let me make this clear. If anyone trespasses into my yard again, I will take further action." Without waiting for a response, she turned on her heel and walked away. She had tried reasoning with them, but it was clear they didn't care. If they thought she would let this go, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. Linda Carter returned home, her anger simmering beneath the surface. She had tried to handle things civilly, but the sheer indifference and entitlement of her neighbors made one thing painfully clear: if she didn't protect her space, no one else would. She decided to take immediate action. That afternoon, she went to the store and purchased a stronger, more secure lock for the side gate. She fastened it tightly, making sure no one could easily open it again. But she needed a more permanent solution: security cameras. The next morning, Linda ordered a high-quality surveillance system with motion sensors and real-time alerts sent directly to her phone. When the installation team arrived, she made sure they positioned the cameras at the best angles, ensuring that no one could sneak in unnoticed. For the next 2 weeks, everything seemed quiet. No wet footprints, no stray towels, no signs of intruders. Linda began to think that maybe, just maybe, they had finally gotten the message. But then, on a sweltering Saturday afternoon, as she pulled into her driveway, she noticed something was off. The side gate, the one she always kept locked, was slightly open. A sharp jolt of adrenaline shot through her veins. Slowly, she approached the gate, pushed it open, and what she saw made her blood boil. Her pool was packed with people. And not just kids, adults were there, too. A group of neighbors lounged on her pool chairs, empty beer cans and soda bottles littering the patio table. Someone had even set up a folding table with snacks and bags of chips. In the water, a couple was chatting casually while children splashed around as if this were a public resort. Linda stood frozen for a moment, unable to believe what she was seeing. Then she clenched her fists, took a deep breath, and marched forward. "Everyone, get out of my yard. Now." She didn't scream, but her voice was sharp, commanding, and laced with fury. The chatter stopped. A few people turned to look at her, surprised. Others seemed annoyed, as if she were the one intruding. A woman standing near the pool's edge, Olivia, a neighbor from 3 houses down, casually waved at her, an irritatingly breezy tone in her voice. "Oh, Linda, don't be so uptight. It's such a hot day. We just wanted to cool off a bit. You've got such a beautiful pool, it'd be a shame to keep it all to yourself." Linda felt her rage surge like a tidal wave. "A shame? This is my property. None of you have permission to be here. A man leaning against the pool's edge, beer in hand, shrugged. You weren't home. It's not like it was bothering you. Linda stepped forward, her voice dropping into a dangerously cold tone. Not bothering me? This is my yard, my pool, my furniture. You have no right to be here. For a second, there was silence. A few people exchanged uneasy glances. Some of them, at least, seemed to realize they had crossed a line. But Olivia just smirked, crossing her arms. Linda, you're making a big deal out of nothing. We weren't hurting anything. If you didn't like it, you could have just asked us to leave. No need to throw a fit. Linda's patience snapped. She didn't waste another breath arguing. Instead, she strode straight to the pool's control panel and pressed the button to shut off the filtration system. The low hum of the motor died instantly, and the water stilled into an eerie silence. Then, without hesitation, she yanked the power cord to the Bluetooth speaker, cutting off the loud music mid-beat. Dead silence. Her voice, steady and unwavering, sliced through the tension. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police. The atmosphere shifted immediately. The people lounging on her chairs began gathering their things in a hurry. Kids scrambled out of the water, dripping and wrapping towels around themselves. The man with the beer muttered something under his breath and tossed his empty can onto the table. Within minutes, her backyard was clearing out. Olivia was the last to leave. As she reached the gate, she turned back with a smirk and a mocking tone. You're being ridiculous. Linda, no one got hurt. Linda didn't respond. She simply slammed the gate shut and locked it. She stood there for a moment, surveying the aftermath, scattered towels, wet footprints, a forgotten soda can. This wasn't over. They didn't respect her. They didn't even think they had done anything wrong. And if she didn't do something more drastic, they would be back. Taking a deep breath, Linda pulled out her phone. She already had a plan in mind. This time, they were going to learn their lesson. And it was going to cost them. Linda stood in her kitchen, staring intently at the phone screen. The surveillance camera had captured the entire scene in her yard earlier that afternoon, from the moment the group casually opened her gate, laid out food and drinks, and drank beer, to their nonchalant exit after being firmly thrown out by her. She rewound the footage, noticing Olivia smirking as she left, while the others muttered something, presumably complaints about their fun being ruined. Linda gripped her phone tightly, irritation surging within her. They showed no remorse. They didn't even feel they'd done anything wrong. She had tried talking to them, gently reminding them, asking them to respect boundaries. All she received in return was mockery. If they refused to understand willingly, she would make sure they had no choice but to understand. Linda opened her laptop, searching for something that would allow her to send an unmistakable message. And soon, she found exactly what she needed. Her plan began with upgrading her security system. The next day, she returned to the hardware store and purchased 2 heavy-duty, anti-cut padlocks. She replaced the lock on the side gate with one robust enough to withstand significant force. Then secured the water filter control box, ensuring nobody could tamper with it again. But locking up was just the first step. The real core of her plan was the trap for repeat offenders. Linda ordered a specialized chemical, a pool dye that reacted to urine. It was a trick often used by public swimming pools to discourage those ignoring hygiene rules. When someone urinated in the water, the chemical would turn the water a deep blue or dark purple, making their actions impossible to hide. But Linda didn't stop there. She visited a print shop and commissioned a large, eye-catching warning sign. It clearly read, "Warning. This pool is treated with specialized chemicals. Unauthorized users may experience severe skin irritation, persistent redness and itching, temporary skin discoloration due to chemical exposure if you're uninvited. Stay away." Of course, this was entirely fabricated. The chemical she used didn't cause irritation or skin discoloration. But those unaware wouldn't dare risk testing the claim. Once she received the sign, Linda promptly drilled it onto the fence near the side gate, ensuring it was easily visible. But to enhance the credibility of her deception, she took another step. She needed evidence to reinforce her warning. Linda called a friend who worked in pool maintenance and asked him for an empty chemical container, one marked with hazard warnings typically used in public pool water treatment. She placed the empty container right beside the water filtration system, ensuring anyone seeing it would automatically associate it with the warning sign. Stepping back, she admired her handiwork with a satisfied smile. Now let's see who dares to come back, she thought. She didn't have to wait long. The following afternoon, while relaxing inside with a cup of coffee, Linda received an alert from her camera system. A group of 3 teenagers stood outside the fence, pointing at the warning sign. One of them, a boy in a gray hoodie, leaned in closely to read the details. He then whispered something to his friends. Linda clearly saw the hesitation in their expressions. Another teen, seemingly braver, started moving towards the gate but quickly stepped back upon spotting the dangerous chemical container. Within less than a minute, the 3 teens quickly retreated, unwilling to test their luck. Linda smiled, sipping her coffee. Her plan had worked. But the real surprise came later that evening. Browsing social media, she stumbled across a post on the neighborhood Facebook group. It was authored by Olivia, the neighbor Linda had confronted earlier. Not sure if anyone noticed, but Linda Carter put some strange chemicals in her pool. She even put up a sign claiming they cause skin irritation and discoloration. Who knows if that stuff is leaking into the ground? Seems pretty dangerous. Comments immediately flooded in. What's wrong with her? It's just water. Why is she being so dramatic? Is that even legal? Linda chuckled. They weren't angry because she lied. They were angry because they knew they couldn't sneak into her pool anymore. She set her phone down, leaning back comfortably in her chair. Her psychological tactic had succeeded. Now, if anyone dared step into her yard again, they'd have to wonder, was it really worth the risk? Linda thought her plan had finally scared off the intruders. But she had underestimated just how entitled some people could be. She didn't have to wait long to realize that they still weren't ready to back down. 3 nights later, just as she was getting ready for bed, a series of loud, impatient knocks echoed through her house. Frowning, Linda set down her cup of tea and walked to the door. Peering through the peephole, she immediately recognized the unwelcome visitor, Olivia, the same neighbor who had led the unauthorized pool party in her backyard. Linda sighed and opened the door, arms crossed. Can I help you? Olivia wasted no time, her voice sharp. We need to talk. Linda leaned against the doorframe, unfazed. About what? Olivia folded her arms, tilting her chin toward the backyard. That stupid warning sign of yours. The whole neighborhood is talking about it. People think you put dangerous chemicals in your pool. Do you have any idea how bad that looks? Linda raised an eyebrow, hiding the smirk tugging at her lips. Oh, but I haven't seen anyone stepping into my backyard lately. Seems like the sign is doing exactly what it was meant to do. Olivia's frustration flared as her voice grew sharper. You can't do this. What if some kid accidentally touches the water? What if your chemicals leak into the ground? This could be dangerous. Linda studied her for a moment. Seeing through the facade, Olivia wasn't worried about safety. She was worried because Linda's plan had worked. If that's a concern, Linda said calmly, then maybe people should stop sneaking into my yard. Because as long as no one goes in, there's nothing to worry about. Right? Olivia's mouth opened as if she had a retort ready. But then she hesitated. Because Linda was right. But instead of admitting defeat, Olivia shot her a glare filled with resentment. You're turning the whole neighborhood against you. No one likes a selfish neighbor. Linda let out a soft, amused laugh. Oh, so I'm selfish because I don't want people trespassing on my own property? If that's your definition of selfishness, then fine, I'll wear the title proudly. Olivia clenched her jaw, staring at Linda, waiting, hoping, for some sign of hesitation. But when she saw that Linda wasn't going to back down, she let out an angry huff and spun on her heel, storming off into the night. Linda watched her go, shaking her head. She wasn't surprised. People like Olivia weren't used to hearing no. They were used to taking what they wanted without facing consequences. But now, they had learned that Linda Carter wasn't someone they could push around. Before heading back inside, Linda glanced at the warning sign once more. The bold, clear lettering stood firm against the fence, a silent but powerful message to anyone who thought about testing her patience again. But Linda wasn't done yet. The final layer of defense. The next morning, she decided to add one last line of protection. She ordered a motion-activated sprinkler system and spent the afternoon installing it along the fence line of her backyard. Now, if anyone dared to trespass again, they wouldn't just be met with a sign. They'd get soaked. A final warning shot for anyone foolish enough to test her boundaries again. Stepping back, Linda surveyed her work one last time. The locks were in place. The cameras were watching. The warning sign stood tall. And now, the instant punishment system was armed and ready. She took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in weeks. This time, she was sure of one thing. No one would dare trespass again. Linda felt relieved after installing the motion-activated sprinkler system. If anyone dared to sneak into her backyard again, they'd be met with an ice-cold surprise before they even reached the pool. But even with her tightened security, she hadn't anticipated that Olivia still wasn't ready to give up. 3 days after their confrontation at the door, Linda received a letter from the Neighborhood Homeowners Association, WA. Frowning, she opened it and read, "Dear Mrs. Carter, we have received several complaints from residents regarding the warning sign you have placed on your property. Some feel that its wording is misleading and may negatively impact the neighborhood's image. We kindly ask that you reconsider removing the sign to avoid any unnecessary misunderstandings. Sincerely, the WA president." Linda inhaled deeply, trying to stay calm. So Olivia had really stooped this low? She folded the letter, set it down on the table, and immediately opened her laptop. Within minutes, she found the official WA regulations and skimmed through the relevant sections. Nowhere did it state that she was prohibited from putting up a warning sign on her own property. She wasn't violating any rules. Linda made a decision right then and there. She wasn't going to back down. If Olivia thought she could pressure her into submission by dragging the WA into this, she was dead wrong. The heated WA meeting. That evening, Linda attended the HOA's scheduled meeting. As she walked into the small conference room at the neighborhood clubhouse, she immediately spotted Olivia in the front row, sitting with her arms crossed, a smug expression on her face. Mark, the WA president, a middle-aged man with graying hair, stood up and addressed the room. "Tonight, we need to discuss a concern brought to us regarding the warning sign placed in Mrs. Carter's backyard." Before he could continue, Olivia immediately jumped in. "I don't even know why this is up for discussion," she huffed. She put up a threatening sign, spreading lies about dangerous chemicals in her pool. "This makes our whole neighborhood look bad." Linda sat up straight, her voice calm but firm. "I'm not threatening anyone, I'm simply protecting my property." Mark sighed. "Mrs. Carter, some residents feel that the sign's wording is a bit alarming. Would you be open to modifying or removing it?" Linda smiled slightly. "I'm sorry if anyone feels uncomfortable, but my sign is on my private property. According to WA regulations, I have every right to post a warning sign as long as it does not contain illegal or offensive content." A few people in the room nodded in agreement. Olivia clenched her jaw, realizing that she couldn't use the rulebook against Linda. Linda continued, her tone sharper, "And let's be clear about why that sign is there. Certain individuals in this neighborhood trespassed onto my property and used my pool without permission. I asked them to stop, and they ignored me. If people in this community respected personal boundaries, that sign wouldn't even be necessary." Mark remained silent for a moment before nodding. "You're right. Based on our regulations, there's no violation here. You are not required to take the sign down." Olivia's face twisted in frustration. "This is ridiculous. If everyone acted like her, what would happen to our sense of community?" Linda let out a soft laugh, one without a hint of humor. "Community doesn't mean people get to take whatever they want without permission." "Olivia." A heavy silence filled the room. Olivia clenched her fists, seething, but she had nothing left to argue. Finally, Mark concluded, "The WA will not interfere further. Mrs. Carter has the right to keep her sign up." Linda cast Olivia one last glance before standing up, her heart light with victory. She had won, and this time, there was nothing Olivia could do about it. Linda thought that after the WA meeting, Olivia would finally give up. But once again, she had underestimated just how stubborn her neighbor was. Just 3 days later, on a quiet evening, Linda was reading when a series of urgent knocks echoed through the house. She set her book down and walked to the door at a leisurely pace. Peering through the peephole, she immediately recognized the face on the other side, Olivia. But this time, there was no arrogance in her expression. Instead, she looked uneasy, worried, even, maybe, a little scared. Linda opened the door, crossing her arms. What now, Olivia? Olivia hesitated for a moment before speaking. I need to ask you something. Linda raised an eyebrow. After everything you've done, you think I'm just going to help you? Olivia clenched her fists, lowering her voice. I just need to know. The chemicals in your pool, are they really dangerous? Linda blinked, then slowly let a knowing smile creep onto her face. Oh, she mused. Let me guess. Someone ignored my warning? Olivia bit her lip, saying nothing, but the panic in her eyes told Linda everything she needed to know. Someone had trespassed, and now, they were paying the price for it. Linda tilted her head. Tell me, Olivia, what happened? Olivia sighed, glancing around as if making sure no one else could hear. Then, in a hushed voice, she admitted, my nephew, he came home with his hands completely stained dark blue. He said he swam in your pool. Linda almost laughed. The trap had worked perfectly. The chemical she had used wasn't harmful, but it would react to urine and certain other contaminants in the water, leaving behind a temporary, brightly colored stain. Linda kept her expression serious as she met Olivia's gaze. I warned you. Anyone who trespasses has to deal with the consequences. Olivia looked genuinely flustered now. Is there any way to wash it off? Linda tapped her chin, pretending to think. Oh, of course there is. But I'm not sure I feel like sharing. Olivia pressed her lips together, clearly torn. Then, with great reluctance, she sighed in defeat. All right, Linda, I was wrong. I shouldn't have let people use your pool without permission. I'm sorry. Linda studied her for a long moment before finally nodding. An apology won't erase what happened, she said firmly, but at least you finally understand. She stepped back into the house, grabbed a bottle of mild cleansing solution, and handed it to Olivia. Just wash with this, she said, but remember, if anyone dares step into my pool again, next time, it won't be this easy to fix. Olivia took the bottle without a word. For the first time, she turned and walked away without her usual smugness. Linda shut the door, a satisfied smile forming on her lips. Finally, they understood. No need for the police. No pointless arguments. Just a little creativity and determination, and she had won her peace back. Linda had finally reclaimed her peace. No more wet footprints on her patio. No more unauthorized pool parties in her backyard. No more condescending stares from people who thought they were entitled to something that wasn't theirs. She never had to call the police. Never had to scream or start a full-blown feud. With patience, a little creativity, and firm boundaries, she had made them back off on their own. But the biggest lesson Linda learned wasn't just about protecting her property. It was about protecting herself. Because in life, there will always be people who take advantage of your kindness. They will invade your space, drain your time, energy, and even your self-respect, simply because you let them. Linda realized that if you don't set boundaries, people will cross them. If you don't demand respect, people will disregard you. And if you don't stand up for what's yours, no one else will do it for you. Was she being too much for going to such lengths to keep intruders out? Maybe, but she wasn't wrong. And what about you? Have you ever had to fight to protect what was yours? If you were in Linda's shoes, what would you have done?